Okay, so we're here on the second day of Fantasy MagicCon, and we're incredibly glad to have you here with us. Would you like to tell us a little something more about yourself and what you're doing, and what's your relation to Resident Evil fandom?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me here. It's been an incredible 2 days so far here at Fantasy and MagicCon, and I guess to introduce myself first to people who might not know me. My name is Alex Aniel. I'm known as CBX Freak on the Resident Evil internet fandom, the gaming community, and I am probably most known at this point for the book that I wrote about the history of Resident Evil's development called Itchy and Tasty, which there's actually a Polish version as well, which came out a few years ago.
Some of us do have the copies, so...
Thank you. I really hope people enjoyed reading the book and they learned something from it. But yeah, basically, as far as my background is concerned, I'm originally from California in the US, but I have lived in Tokyo, Japan for almost 20 years. And normally I work in the gaming industry, so... When writing Itchy Tasty, I wanted to utilize my connections in the development community, my language knowledge, and my passion for writing and my passion for history to write the book. So that's the end result of it.
Okay, so that's how you got connected to the original creators of Resident Evil, through your connections with the game dev?
Yeah, in fact, my connections began before I started working. I was still in university when I first started dabbling with or associating with game developers, both in and out of Japan. But when I graduated from my master's program 15 years ago, I decided to join the game industry. And so, yeah, that's really how it started. But I had, because I was active in gaming forums in the 2000s, when I visited Japan one year, like people there wanted to reach out and get in touch because they knew I was very passionate about Resident Evil. And so that's how my friendships were developed. The very, very first time I ever connected with anybody from the Resident Evil development community was actually Shinji Mikami himself, along with the director of the original Resident Evil Code Veronica, Hiroki Kato. So
that's so cool.
I took a vacation to Japan in January 2007, so almost 20 years ago now, in fact. And a friend of mine who was working with them at the time was nice enough to bring me to dinner with the two of them. And I didn't know any Japanese at the time, so it was a very much like, not a regret per se, but I do wish I would have had a bigger opportunity to speak to them more directly.
So that would have made a few things easier.
Much easier, but I did make up for it much later on when I finally did learn the language.
You did get to know them a little bit better and ask them a lot of questions about the creation process behind the entire series.
Right. Exactly.
So was that first meeting your like an actual in? Did they remember you, and that's what helped you convince them to talk to you? Or
yeah, it was almost 20 years ago, so even I don't really remember everything, from that night, to be honest. But if I remind Mikami-san who I am, he actually does remember. But you can imagine someone like him meets a lot of people over the course of his career. And, sometimes details get fuzzy. But, the last time I saw him was maybe about a year and a half ago. So he remembered me then.
That's still quite lovely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of creators do remember these random people because of their passion. That always speaks to the creative side.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, would you like to share with us some of that gathering information process? What did it look like?
Sure. So my educational and academic background was actually in history. Obviously not video game history, but Japanese history.
Here we're gonna get video game history.
American history. Video game history is real. It is now 40 years of 50, if not 60 years of history on gaming and technology. Yep. Absolutely, I agree with that. But I have a background in doing qualitative research, quantitative research, primary sources, secondary sources, and
Also, a lot of like archival work.
archival work. Yes, like reading a source, understanding where it came from, how reliable it is. So I did that when I got my master's program, and so I had that foundation. Like it allowed me to know what the process entailed when it came to writing a book that
And
at
you
least
were
has
able to apply it
credibility.
later on
Exactly.
to your own experience. Okay,
Exactly.
that's so cool. By the way, during your work, did you manage to find any interesting tidbits that did not make it into the final print?
That did not make it into the final book.
I mean, there are always like some information that you have to trim off.
I feel like if it was not common knowledge, one of the ways I try to determine if something is common knowledge or not is to do an internet search to see if anyone has ever discussed anything related to that subject.
I mean, it's a
And-
good start, definitely.
And I do that in both English and in Japanese just to make sure all of my
Japanese
bases.
forums seem to be like a completely different world.
Yes, and this is a Japanese gaming franchise, so it's, for me personally, it's very important to know what's out there in Japanese in addition to English.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so, I mean, it's minor stuff. I think, like I think if something didn't make it, it was probably something to the tune of, person X didn't like person B.
So the drama, yeah. We don't like
Yeah,
drama, definitely not.
I didn't set out to write a book that would, like, be critical of any specific person or any specific company, right? That's not really what I was trying to write.
understandable.
And so probably something like that. Anything that was really interesting to, for the fans to know, I did try to put it in there.
Okay, that's amazing. By the way, while you were talking with the creators and doing all the research and gathering information, did you find anything that was like completely view changing for you? That completely changed your view about the series?
About the series,
Like, for example, did you start to think differently about the entire series and its projection?
in general, it allowed me to have an even better understanding of just how hard it is to make any video game, a single part of a video game. It takes a lot of planning, coordination, resource management, and elements like that. And I think that's not just with Resident Evil, but it's with any game that you make. I think my biggest appreciation / surprise, well, maybe not surprise because it's really not surprising, but like my book came out along with the 25th anniversary, and it just
That is quite a nice round number. Very
exactly
special.
so 5 years ago actually, but now I think it really surprises and amazes me how unplanned all of this really was at the end of the day, right? Like, as of today, Resident Evil has 30 years of history, but nobody back in 1996 had a grand vision for turning Resident Evil into this multimedia, international, global
Yeah, it's basically
juggernaut.
an empire.
Absolutely. And nobody ever envisioned that. In fact, going into, if we were going to talk about surprising anecdotes, going into the first Resident Evil, that one almost got canceled because one of those big consulting firms that people pay millions of dollars to talk to was like, there's no prospect for this game to sell. You should just cancel it in order to improve your financial situation. And so seeing where it is now and the fact we're here in
that
Warsaw.
absolutely dominated survival horror and kept even remaking other games. Like with the release of Resident Evil 4, there's suddenly a completely new perspective that developers started using in their games.
Absolutely. There's been so much change, but Capcom has managed to carefully steer the ship in the right direction when they needed it to. And I think it's a very impressive achievement for them.
From what I've heard, at least about Resident Evil 4, the development of Resident Evil games can be quite chaotic. I got many different versions, a bunch of different visions clashing around. Okay, tell us about that.
Very true. not every Resident Evil, but a lot of them. I would say more than half of them probably get changed significantly during development because of one reason or another. And ideally, like when you're making a game, the director has a very solid vision, and the company's done its research, and they know what works, they know what doesn't work, they know what the fans want, they know what the audiences want, and they stick to that throughout development. But things happen. Technologies change, or pandemics happen, for example.
Oh yeah,
in recent
that must
history.
have had an incredible impact
And-
on a lot of games.
And sometimes things change, beyond the control of the developer. Like I would say one good example is Resident Evil Zero. That began as a Nintendo 64 game, but
Wait, it started as the Nintendo 64?
it did, yeah.
Oh my god, that's one hell of a jump.
Yeah. And it was very publicized back in 1999, 2000. Like, we're Capcom, we're making an original Resident Evil game for the Nintendo 64, even though these cartridges don't hold a lot of data, but we're gonna do it. And for reasons really beyond their control. Like, it's not Capcom's fault that the Nintendo 64 was replaced by the GameCube, right, when it was.
True.
And so things like that will alter the trajectory of
The entire project.
of a franchise. Like if Resident Evil 0 had come out on N64, I think it would have been received very differently than the GameCube game did, right? Because the GameCube game was 2 years late, right? About 2 years
yeah.
late. Like by that time, people were like, we're really tired of, the classic
Resident
formula.
Evil was
and-
going through a little bit of a slump at the time.
Exactly. I would argue that's really when it started in earnest, right? When Zero came out and people were like,
I don't know, some people would say Code Veronica, even though it pains me when they say that.
It does pain me too. I don't think that was true in 2000 and 2001, though. I think when Code Veronica came out, it was a very well-respected game. But I think once games really started advancing in that era, you got like Devil May Cry, Onimusha, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3,
those were absolutely ridiculous.
Resident Evil
with
4.
this kind of thing.
I think those games being very good kind of made Code Veronica look a little old in comparison, plus all of the other issues with it. But
Oh yeah.
in 2000, 2001, I think it was very well received. It sold pretty well. But yeah, like Resident Evil 4 obviously rebooted many, many times.
So many editions.
Yeah, Resident Evil 6. It was very obvious they wanted to keep making games like that after it came out, but I think the
They
reception
wanted
really...
to go bombastic.
Exactly.
It kind of makes sense from the point of how the plots evolved
Mm-hmm.
for them to go big or go home, but maybe they overshot it a little bit.
I mean, yeah, like that's another example where really factors beyond Capcom's direct control influenced the direction of the following game, right? Like in 2012, no one thought Resident Evil 7 would come out the way it did.
Oh yeah, no one
Right.
expected
No
that.
one had
It was
any
like
idea.
a hit out of
It
nowhere.
took over a year for them to figure out what they wanted to do with it next. And so, yeah, like again, it goes back to my previous answer where nothing has been really planned in advance. And I think it's really remarkable how this franchise has grown and the crowds that it's brought to this event.
Oh yeah, yesterday was absolutely crazy. We still have a bunch of pictures that we'll probably put into the video later and are posted. By the way, since we're talking a lot about history, what's your history with the series? How did you start?
My history. So, my first Resident Evil was actually the original Resident Evil Code Veronica on the Sega Dreamcast.
Let's go.
So I was a bit of a late comer to the series.
It must have been weird to just jump in like right in the middle of the plot.
Yeah, kind of. In retrospect, I think, like Code Veronica obviously relies on what happened in Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2,
Yeah.
right? In order to understand the story. But I didn't mind so much because I wasn't a hardcore or a hobbyist gamer at that point just yet. Like, up until I started playing Resident Evil, I was more like a Nintendo gamer. I was playing Pokemon at the time, was the big,
I mean, understandable.
game at the
Pokemon
time.
is still big, so.
Absolutely. But I actually got into horror games with Silent Hill, the first one on the PlayStation.
Ooh, oh, that must have been one hell of a trip.
Absolutely. I was only 12 or 13 when I started playing it, but Silent Hill just like drew me in. Like just I didn't realize video games could explore this kind of material.
Dark topics.
Yeah,
and
and-
be so unnerving.
Unnerving, but like I was really drawn to it, even as a 12-year-old. Like, thinking about it
we
now,
have a natural drive for macabre and stuff
exactly.
that we don't know.
But it's like the religious themes and the gore and that sort of stuff is not typically something you market to a 12-year-old. But
Oh, definitely.
I managed to play it anyway.
A lot of 12-year-olds can be quite macabre too.
Sure,
I mean,
yeah.
They are interested in scary stuff.
I guess,
they can get
yeah.
traumatized easily.
Maybe nowadays, because the internet is just so prevalent, you have access to a lot of content. You know, even if you're young, you can kind of start looking into darker material. But in 2000 and 1999, like, you know, the internet was still in its
I was
infancy.
very walking, so I cannot say as much.
Right. But yeah, like after I beat the original Silent Hill maybe like 10 times because there's like multiple endings,
Yeah,
and
you can get a bunch of them.
that's how I learned how to speedrun a game. Was playing
You're
Silent Hill
actually
1.
speedrunning Silent Hill 1.
Yeah,
oh my
like
God, that's so cool.
like well, once you know how to do everything, you know, it becomes second nature. But like I told myself, well, Silent Hill 1's great, but the second one won't be out for a long time. So I remember asking my older brother, like, if you like Silent Hill, what else am I supposed to play? And we were at Toys R Us. It was the toy store in the U.S. Where I was living at the time, and we had just gotten the Dreamcast, and it had just been my birthday, so I had birthday money to spend, and I was
that's always fun.
looking for things to buy, and we were walking by the Sega Dreamcast section, and my brother pointed to Resident Evil Code Veronica, and he said, well, you know, if you like Silent Hill, you should, you know, Resident Evil actually was first.
Resident Evil Code Veronica was in Toys R Us.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, they'll sell horror games. That's not the issue. There's an ESRB rating.
It's a bit of a funny idea that a toy shop would be selling like adult video games.
Right. So yeah, I said, okay, well, Code Veronica looks really interesting. Let me try it. And I wanted to play a Dreamcast game because it was the newest system at the time.
Yeah, true.
So
give it a spin.
Gave it a spin. Like, oh god, that cutscene at the
that
beginning.
First casting, yeah, it's absolutely
and the
ridiculous.
music and obviously the graphics are really good for the time, and that's really where I got absolutely hooked. Like, I think for all its flaws, like, Code Veronica is a very brilliantly designed game, and there's so much to love about it. And despite it being a much longer game than Silent Hill 1, I think I beat Code Veronica probably like 20 or 30 times that first year.
Wow, okay.
And then after that, I found out
that there's more?
There are more. Well, because Code Veronica doesn't have a number, like, I knew Resident Evil was a thing, but I hadn't realized, like, it was like 1, 2, 3 Code Veronica, right? I thought maybe like it was its own story, but you know, it wasn't long before I found out just how connected it was to the previous game. So like after that, I went back to 2 on the PlayStation 1, and then I did 3, and then I did the original Resident Evil, and then I did Survivor after that because it was already out. Gun Survivor, yes. So I kind of went in a very bizarre. I jumped around a bit.
I mean, it did serve you though. You did get hooked in, and you're now an enormous part of the entire series and the fandom.
Thank you.
So, how did it feel like to be talking with like Shinji Mikami in the day? What did you feel getting to know all of these guys, especially after that first meeting?
It's a very humbling and honorable experience for me to have an audience with people who make these games, and I would say I've even become, you know, friends with some of them. To be honest, we keep in touch, and they see themselves as normal people. They don't really. It's really unusual, especially for game developers from Japan, to put themselves on a throne and make it about them, right? That seems like something that media and fans really willed into existence for most people.
Yeah, most
right?
people like to have like one face and be like, oh, that's the person who did that. I don't have to learn anything else.
There are exceptions, obviously. Like Hideo Kojima is obviously one of the biggest exceptions, but I think everybody else.
I think also like Yoko Taro would be one of the other guys who are always like recognizable because of how bizarre they are.
Well, you're supposed to recognize him because of his helmet, right? Not because of his face.
And because of his style.
Yeah.
And interesting gameplay choices.
I have an interesting story from just a few months ago, actually.
Oh, really?
I went to Finland and one of the developers who are based at Remedy Entertainment,
Oh, yeah,
Alan
yeah.
Wake, Control,
Oh,
Max
that's so
Payne.
cool.
They wanted the director of Resident Evil Requiem to visit them,
Oh,
Koshi Nakanishi-san, and
that would have been one hell of a crossover.
he did. It would be absolutely. It's really funny, but Nakanishi-san did an interview with a Japanese magazine saying, like, once I'm done with Requiem, I'm gonna go to Finland for vacation. And so Remedy's communications manager, Thomas, caught wind of that, and he messaged an acquaintance of mine who said, well, if Nakanishi-san's coming to Finland, we'd love to have him visit the studio.
Yeah.
And so that acquaintance contacted me because I'm actually quite close with Nakanishi-san. Like, we go for dinner or
Ooh.
drinks every few months to years.
I think that's still very cool.
So, long story short, I arranged for Nakanishi-san to visit Remedy while he was there, and because Remedy's they have Japanese-speaking staff, but that person happened to be on vacation when Nakanishi-san was visiting.
That's a bit of a pity.
So I stepped in.
Oh.
I came to Finland
Let's go.
from Spain, where I'm temporarily residing, and it was a really, really interesting meeting. But there was one part where Sam Lake is sitting here, Nakanishi-san is sitting here, and I'm just like
In the middle.
interpreting between the two, and then there's this part of me that's just like, what am I doing here? Like, I have no business being between these two people.
Between these two creators.
Like I am not a creative person, to be honest. I don't know how to
You
draw.
wrote a book. I would say that's pretty
But
creative.
That's sure, I guess. But like, I can't draw. I can't write an original story or anything like that. I can't do any of
it
that,
must take
right?
a lot of experience too, so
I'm
maybe you should just
more
start.
analytical or investigative rather than pure creative.
Okay.
But again, it was like, wow, I'm like right here, and these two legends, people, creators that ordinary gamers would die to meet, even for a minute. I'm just like
Definitely.
spending an hour between them, and
Some of us managed to get a picture with Nakanishi-san during Gamescom last year.
Oh, yeah,
and it
he's-
absolutely blew up.
He's
Everyone's just
he's incredibly
raving about
friendly,
it.
absolutely.
Oh yeah, he's actually quite lovely.
So yeah, that's your question. It's a great position to be in. I wish fans had more opportunities to do this, especially.
It would have been nice, but some of them would probably jump them. to be
Typically,
honest.
there's a language barrier for a lot of them.
Oh,
and
true. There's also
yeah.
that. Well. Okay, so maybe let's go back a little bit more to the games. What do you think
Mm-hmm.
about the remakes? Like, how do they treat the source material, in your opinion?
Like all of them from 1 until 4?
Maybe
Or
let's
2?
focus on the newer era, so 2, 3, 4.
Huh, yeah.
We both know that Resident Evil 3 remake was a little bit of a controversial game.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that Capcom has remade 2 and 3 and 4 up until this point, and obviously Veronica has been announced
Yes.
as of today.
As long as they keep Alfred's stupid laugh, I will be happy.
I'm like, should I try? I can't even do it.
You have to go like high.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Welcome, Claire.
Welcome, Claire. I have no idea how that actor
Let
managed
us
to do
have it.
that
Let us keep it,
back in the day. Like, that cannot be anyone's natural voice.
I don't know, maybe he was high. Back in the day, you never know.
Yeah, I'm glad the remakes exist, because I do think the longer time goes on, the more inaccessible the original Resident Evil, 2, 3, and even 4 at this point. Like,
some people will
become-
bounce off because of the movement style. Some other
Movement
will,
style, controls.
bounce off because of even just the graphics. I've heard about a few people like that. Sadly.
those games are not localized in a lot of the languages of the biggest Resident Evil communities of today, which are, includes Poland, China, the Middle East, and Brazil.
Yeah, I've heard that there's a lot of Brazilians.
Right. And so it made sense from a logistical perspective to remake them and bring those stories back, bring those characters back, bring those settings back. Yeah, I can't, like you, I can't say I agree with every decision Capcom ever made about those remakes. Like my biggest ones are I wasn't really a big fan of how 3 was approached, to be honest. I think a lot of people share that opinion. With 4, that was the remake I didn't really want in general because the original was so good. But people really love the remake. A lot of them. A lot of people love it more than the original, and I think that's perfectly fine. I am a little bitter that they skipped Veronica. Right?
Well, they're not skipping it now.
They're not skipping it anymore, and it's better late than never. But it is still a bit of a strange decision to hop around the timeline like this.
I think they may be trying to set up for Resident Evil 5 because Veronica is the beginning of the Wesker versus Chris. So.
I recently did a video podcast about this very subject with Residents of Evil.
Oh.
And I'm actually not super convinced that Resident Evil 5 remake is happening. I mean, it might. I'm not going to say it's never ever going to happen, but I think
sooner or later it will probably happen.
I think there are a lot of reasons why it may not happen. So,
do you want to share some of us?
I think, just to kind of summarize my thoughts, I think the material is a little controversial. I think that's
just
definitely.
The fact that it's in Africa is gonna ruffle some feathers.
I think that gameplay style is kind of out of the spotlight, like the whole co-op multiplayer shooter. It's like linear, buddy system, linear environments. I feel like that's really not very trendy at the moment. I think online Resident Evil has not really been a very prominent part of the IP for so long. Like we had Resistance, we had Umbrella Corps, and we've had Reverse, but those are all afterthoughts. Like no one ever took them seriously.
They weren't just discarded.
They were just discarded, and I don't really know if the current creative leadership at Capcom's Resident Evil team, the Division 1 team, really understands. Not in a bad way. I don't mean when I say they don't understand. I don't mean that as a criticism. It's just that they're a team that makes single-player experiences.
They're focused on that.
They're focused on single-player experiences, horror-focused.
It's really working out for them so far, especially with Requiem.
And to go and do Resident Evil 5, which would be a very expensive game to make, could be controversial. Like, they haven't made an online game in so long. Like, to me, it seems like a really massive risk when you can take the same resources, take the same budget, make a new game. Because Requiem should not have taken 5 years to come out. And then Capcom has actually said this. They've acknowledged that Requiem came out later than they wanted it to. And it just really goes to show how long it takes to make any game nowadays, right?
Yeah, especially nowadays with all the graphics and fidelity.
Capcom really wants to keep a regular cadence of Resident Evil games. And I really think Resident Evil 5 does not really fit into that framework so cleanly.
Not yet on the spot.
They can figure it out. I mean, I'm not saying this situation is not solvable. It could very well be, but I do think it would be the biggest decision they've made in the RE Engine era would be to take that project on when they could do something else.
Okay, so what do you think would be like the next logical step? Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil Outbreak, maybe?
If I had to choose, Resident Evil 0 is definitely one that should be remade. The first game should be remade again, so the two styles match.
So remake.
And then you'll have 0 to 4, consistently in that style. I would do an Outbreak remake, I think. There's enough material.
That would have been actually quite lovely, especially with all the different resources from the earlier games.
Exactly. Although that would also, have the same problem that 5 would have, where no one's made an online multiplayer game on the Resident Evil team in so long. How do you confidently approach that?
Some people would have been okay with changing it into more of a linear or single player game. It would have been easier to implement into the lore, definitely.
I think with an Outbreak remake, it would be very manageable because it's not a numbered Resident Evil game. It's not even a mainline Resident Evil game. So I think when you're in that territory, you have room to explore a bit creatively.
But it's all in the Raccoon City, so
exactly
before it got blown up, so you can change a lot of things.
They can, reuse a lot of existing environments, right? And I think it would be very manageable. If I could choose, it would be 0, 1. I would do an Outbreak remake for sure.
Okay, somewhere in there. Put it somewhere in there.
And my other choice would be a Revelations remake, the first one.
Revelation.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think that would be a
lovely.
really nice
I mean, it was a
cap
bit
off.
rough because it was first on DS and all that.
3DS,
so.
exactly. But I think it's excellent on 3DS. I think they really pulled off a
Sadly,
miracle.
I've never had it for DS, so I only got to play it on my PS3.
Yeah, it doesn't quite translate as well on consoles.
Oh, definitely, but
But-
it was still quite a lovely game.
But if they took the concept, they took the characters, they gave it that RE engine modern approach, I think it could be
could
like
definitely
a
work, especially the more flooded parts of the map.
yeah, like it. Story-wise, I think it's just as important as any other Resident Evil game at this point, right?
I mean, yeah, it sets up Spencer, the other, Lost in Nightmares.
Right, right.
And Resident Evil, and more set up for Resident Evil 5 if they ever want to do it. So
Sure. And one more remake, I would do Operation Javier, the scenario
Let's
from
go. That
Dark
would
Side
be so
Chronicles. That
cool.
actually, I think,
yeah, it would have been connected to Resident Evil 4 because Krauser is.
given Leon's, I don't want to say newly found because he's been famous and popular for so long, but I think with Leon's explosion in popularity and the voice actor Nick Apostolides' popularity,
Kind
like
of an easy money.
yeah, I think it'd be like like in an off year, like here's a scenario that connects Veronica to Resident Evil 4, right?
Yeah,
and it
go for it.
features Leon and Krauser, and I think that would be a real hit with fans. While they wait for Resident Evil 10 or 11 or whatever it's going to be.
By the way, since we're talking about changes in both the series and in general with gaming, what do you think about the digitization era? Like a lot of us still would love to have like physical copies of the game because
yeah.
no one can ever take them from us.
So, I mean, as a disclaimer, I do work for companies that specialize in releasing physical video games, and so from a professional standpoint, I absolutely disagree with. I think we're just going to call it out, like PlayStation's recent decision to stop
Oh, definitely.
manufacturing disc-based games in 2028. I emphatically
quite terrifying.
disagree with that decision. I think it's a selfish move on their part and a very cynical decision that I think the blowback has been very noticeable.
I mean, I still remember back in the days when they were starting the digitization and online stores for PlayStation and Xbox, and people were saying, "Oh, it's going to save us some money because they're not going to have to buy the discs." And meanwhile, games just went up.
So it's very multifaceted, like a decision like this. I think everybody here who's at Fantasy and MagicCon is a consumer. We buy video games.
Yes,
we
we love them.
we work hard to make money to buy video games, and I think most, if not everybody here, would appreciate having a choice in how they consume their video games, right? Whether it's a digital version of a game or a physical version of a game. Hell, like without physical games, like the autograph sessions and such, right? Like some people like to bring
It's
their.
part of a culture.
I-
a video gamer culture. With that.
I have a collection of physical video games at home that have the director's autographs on them.
Oh wow!
And that's really very dear to me. It really means
Definitely getting to be in the same place
It's-
and having something physical that shows you were
it's a
there.
physical manifestation of my emotional investment in this game, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really something that a digital only platform can never properly support. I mean, obviously we can get posters signed and books and things like that, but it's just
Yeah.
it's not quite the same when it's the video game itself that's
it's
why
easier
we're
to use the
here.
poster than a video game. So
I think the removal of physical video games hurts competition. I think if for example, if we're talking about PlayStation, if PlayStation is the only digital store we can buy games from, one company controls the pricing, they control when and how much you pay, and there are documented examples.
lending your
Lending,
video games and selling them and reselling them.
They can take away your access to your digital library if they accuse you of doing something wrong.
Oh yeah.
Like one of the most prominent examples is, oh, your account was hacked. Well, you're banned, and we're not going to do anything to fix it,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes even proving that, hey, my account was hacked and I want it
And-
back can be like
or-
an entire battle.
Or if your credit card is stolen, and then you have to, call the bank, and then
yeah.
Sony sees that as, oh, you filed a chargeback, so we're going to cancel your account. Like it's simply unfair. And I'm not a legal expert, but it doesn't sound like something that should be allowed, right, by law.
That sounds like a
such.
violation of your consumer rights.
Exactly, like in some fashion. And so if physical has to go away because of, just that's where things are going, I can accept that. Like if it's a natural death, like if we hit a point where like 99% of gamers are buying digital, maybe that's one thing, right?
Yeah.
But like it's not. And the digital infrastructure has not really been set up in a way
it's not
where
accommodating that change.
I feel comfortable
or the
having that
consumers
being the only option, right? I think Steam does a really good job, and I think in the PC realm, there's a lot of competition. GOG, based here in Warsaw, right? If I understand correctly, I think they have a.
They're non-DRM.
They're non-DRM.
And they're really focused on preserving all video games.
They've made preservation their marketing point. That's their differentiator.
I mean, recently I've been buying a few older video games from them, and you can even give them a donation for that. I mean, while you're buying a game.
I'm not getting paid to say this, but if you're a Resident Evil fan, you really should buy those GOG versions because...
Oh yeah, they're quite lovely.
I think it sends a message, but also it's just the right thing to do, right? They're $5 usually, right? Like
they're almost always on sale. It's the same with like Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It's one of the biggest games in like Central Europe. And it's always on sale for like $3.
And like I want to hit one more point. Just personally speaking, the first time I traveled to Japan, I was 17 years old. I spent like 2 days on that trip shopping in this area in Tokyo called Akihabara, like a lot of game shops, the Electric City, the Electric Town, exactly. And
I've also spent like an entire day there because
just like
a few months ago I was there and I was hunting for old school video games.
Like in any Japanese used game shop, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just shelves of old games,
entire walls
of and Resident Evil's in there, right? It's just like going through a shelf, like seeing the different conditions games come in, like the different versions that have come out.
Actually, when I was there in one of the, I think they're called K-Books, something like that. I can't exactly remember the name of the store. Oh no, Book Off.
Book Off, yes.
Yeah, Book Offs have a lot of like used video games.
Yeah.
And there were entire walls of Resident Evil 2 for PS1.
And just imagine, Resident Evil's a 30-year-old franchise. If you were born 20 years ago, right? Like you came after the franchise was born, so you're kind of, you're old enough to travel, internationally on your own. You have maybe enough money to start buying games. Like having used games, having a physical presence gives younger people who want to get into this hobby, like access to the joys that we, it's
even like a good
we have as
starter for someone because it's like, that looks kind of interesting. What's that?
Yeah, and then you bring them in. You want, as a gaming platform, you want people to be invested very, very heavily, right? You want these people, to live and breathe gaming. And I think if you're a physical gamer, I think you're the most likely kind of gamer to really, go
out in the world to get more merch,
be a reliable customer.
Games.
And so it's
definitely
really disappointing, unfortunately.
Sadly, it looks like it's going that way. Although a lot of people are still fighting and are really harrowing Sony over their choices. Maybe Sony will back down like they did with Helldivers 2. Maybe.
It's hard to say because, I think just given the way the world is right now, like I do recognize that it's not easy to make a decision like that because you only have so much budget and resources and time for things. So, I do sort of sympathize with companies that have to make these hard decisions. But at the same time, I think if anything, it was just too early. And I like you, I do hope they change their mind. I think keeping the pressure up, voting with your wallet is important.
That's what speaks to them the most.
Right.
When we heard them in their financials.
Like if you're at Fantasy Magicon and you're learning about Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 for the first time, buy it on GOG, not PlayStation.
Exactly. All right, maybe let's move on to, this is still a little bit connected. If the big bad Sony came over to you and took all your Resident Evils away, which one is the one that you would fight tooth and nail to keep?
Oh God!
If you only could keep one Resident Evil
is this-
in your grasp, which
is this
one would that be?
So this is a variation. If you were dropped into an island with one Resident Evil game, what would it be?
Yes.
Oh, what would it be? I think
Which version?
I would.
Also, maybe it's a remake.
The-
Maybe it's like a specific.
It would be the Wii version of Resident Evil 4.
Oh, I've heard that one is a pretty fun one.
Yeah, because that one, like it plays the way it was intended to. It
I've
has
heard
the
that,
correct
Working with
graphics.
the nunchuck and all of that
Yeah.
is actually amazing.
You have the Wii remote, which I think is
Yeah.
great, but it also works with the GameCube controller, so you don't have
Oh,
to
really?
use the motion controls
That's nice.
if you're not into that. It has all the features. Like Resident Evil 4, the HD versions are a little janky. Like they have issues with the
Oh.
frame rate. So
Okay.
if you're playing like on professional mode, for example, some of those QTEs are impossible. Like I had I was playing.
Like the Krauser fights, maybe?
The Krauser fights are hard. The Salazar statue in the original, if you're playing
Oh,
that
the one where you're running away.
in the HD remaster, like because of the way the frame rate was, like that QTE is tied to the frame rate,
Really?
but then they didn't
Oh.
adjust for that, the button inputs with the higher frame rate of the HD release. So basically, like I think you like in the case of the Switch version that I was playing, like I had to take a pen. And like,
Oh, but like,
it's
God.
like, or it wasn't like I'm making a weird gesture, but like take the pen and just like go and
Stab.
stab the button, and it took me like 40 tries.
Jesus Christ,
Right?
atrocious.
On the Wii version, you just do this, and it's actually fine. Oh God, I'm gonna get turned into a GIF, right? For doing these
Maybe. I mean, if you want, we could probably cut it off, or just say, "Oh, the
or just
video-
replace it with B-roll.
Oh, the video cut off. Oh no, tragedy." All right. And for the last question, I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about Fantasy and Magicon? What was your experience so far here?
So I caught wind of it just through social media. I saw I forgot who made the announcement. I think it might have been Project Parasol who made the announcement, and it was
I mean,
retweeted.
we're trying to keep up with Fantasy and Magicon and post everything as soon as possible.
Right. So I saw, and I saw Nick was going. Nick Apostolides, which was.
I mean, he was one
excellent.
of the first 4 that were supposed to show up.
He is a friend of mine in real life. We've met many times. So after that, it was like, I think Lily Gao was next, which was
Yeah.
really surprising because she's never
supposedly
been.
Nick was the one convinced her to show up.
I'm really glad she's here. I think she's she's lovely.
I mean, I've only managed to get like one picture of her and saw her from
I think
walking around and on the main stage, but she looks absolutely adorable. And
I think
she's just so cute.
I think the audience has done a really nice job of making her feel welcome and
Yeah,
respected.
I hope so.
And then like who was next after that? I think Nicole was announced. Jeff.
I think Nicole, Jeff,
Genevieve, and then
Genevieve.
Aiden Regal.
I mean,
it's like wow.
Genevieve and Jesus Christ, Andrea, Lucius Via.
Yeah. Andre.
Yeah, they showed up on Fantasy and Magicon's Discord and were like, "Hey, we want
can
to
we
come
go?"
over. You don't have to pay for us."
It's funny. That's kind of how I ended up coming
really?
here. I was so since I'm right now in Spain.
Yeah.
In Madrid, it's not a long journey to come to Poland for an event like this, to be honest. So
It's not that long. It's like 3 hours.
3 hours maybe.
Yeah.
But basically, I said, well, at this point, like Angela Santalbano was supposed to be here, and I was just like,
sadly, she
God.
had to quit last week.
I was like, this is like probably the biggest gathering of Resident Evil voice actors in one event. I wonder what strings they pulled. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in the same continent. I should just come and check it out.
Yeah, you should.
And I'm really glad
I'm so glad you're here with us.
Well, everyone was very welcoming. When the moment I expressed interest in going, they reached out. They said, hey, like we can, if you'd like to have, some participation in the event as press or PR, we'd love to have you. And it's just been great. And I got here, the first day was yesterday. And it was like Jesus, like my Uber pulled up into the entrance and there was a really long line of people who were still
some
waiting
people
to
were
get
waiting
in.
like 2 hours.
It was like around noon,
get
so
in.
like it had already been open for a few hours, and I'm like, wow, there's still
they
people coming
actually
in.
like sold out yesterday,
But-
so it was like 12,000 people at one point.
Wow,
here.
that's a lot.
Yes.
12,000. A lot of Resident Evil cosplayers in the line,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and even my Uber driver was like,
What's happening?
well, we couldn't speak to each other, but
Yeah.
he was like,
You can see,
he was like, what
see
is
it on
this?
his face. Like,
Yeah,
he
I
was-
think my Uber driver was from Ukraine, and I don't know
Oh,
if he's
yeah.
familiar with this kind of fandom, but he was like, "Whoa, what is
That's
this?" Right? and when I got in, it was just like Resident Evil, high quality cosplayers everywhere, like every variant of Claire, Jill, Leon.
Yeah, there were so many Adas walking around.
Ada,
Graces.
Rebecca,
Oh yeah,
Graces.
another very cute Rebecca just going like.
God, we had an FBI Grace walking around who
Oh
looked
yeah,
amazing.
she's around here.
We
She's
had
gonna come back here, no worries.
there's a zombie Jill, behind the
There's
camera.
zombie Jill, where?
Oh, maybe she left. But it's been
pity.
amazing. Like I just like there was a fan gathering, and I think there might have been like 200 people in this one booth.
Oh yeah, there was the
All Resident Evil.
fan gathering. We managed to get a few interviews with some of the people.
And everyone's been so friendly, and everyone has been like willing to interact with each other.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Resident Evil events, especially in Japan. But it's
It makes
never
sense. It's like their home turf. So.
it's never like this back in Japan for me. Like even if there's 200 Resident Evil fans in one spot, they're not going to talk amongst each other. They just talk,
Really?
within their small groups, and
Oh.
it's a cultural thing. But just to that point, like I've never seen something like this where just like Resident Evil fans everywhere, congregating and
mixing and mingling.
mixing and mingling and sharing, stories and supporting each other. Like,
Oh, yeah.
there was like a photo op with like 5 Adas in it, and it's not a
Entire
competition.
Ada wall.
It's not a competition. It's like, we're all in this together. And I
Yeah.
think it's been absolutely incredible.
Okay, it's been an absolute honor to have you here.
Likewise.
Once again, and we're all very happy that you showed up. We're ecstatic all of the VAs showed up. We're really like lobbying for them to come over. But they also did a lot of their own work. For example, as I said before, Nick and Lily. I think a lot of actors actually came because of Nick. And then
I want to
all
hang
those-
out with Nick at in some random country. That would be nice, right?
Yeah, it sounds like an absolute fun.
Yeah.
Also, from what I've heard, a lot of them were also intrigued by the fact that we're like every week there was another Resident Evil VA coming here, and some of them were just like, okay, let's make this a reunion, because most of them have never been in one place at the same time.
Poland is one of the fastest growing countries in terms of like Resident Evil fans. Like the sales of Resident Evil games in Poland have exploded in the past few years. From what
we're also very glad that we finally have our own Polish versions of the games,
and
so.
that's why they do them in Polish now. Do they do the voice acting in Polish too now?
Not yet.
Not yet?
First
I'm sure
it
they'll
was
get
more
there.
for the
I'm sure
the
they'll get there.
subtitles,
Yeah.
And now there are some warriors who want the full dub version.
Yeah, someday I'm pretty sure, if sales
Hopefully.
continue to grow, absolutely. Like the biggest Resident Evil communities around the world are no longer in the US, in Japan, Western Europe, right? Like they traditionally were when the franchise was first started. Now Brazil is huge.
Yeah, we keep hearing a lot of Brazilians.
Brazil, very
and a lot of
passionate.
Brazilians are also talking on Twitter, saying, "Let's bring a reunion over here."
You see Brazilian soccer fans, football fans, like
Yeah.
they'll do that for Resident Evil as well. Like
definitely.
they have the culture and the passion for it. Middle East, Arab speaking
Middle East
countries
is
like
also
Saudi
very
Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Egypt, places like that, like massive amounts of Resident Evil fans, and it's growing every year. And then like Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, all big Resident Evil fans. So I really hope that Capcom continues to pay attention to these fandoms in countries that weren't necessarily like
The
considered
biggest.
the mainstream ones. There's more than the US, there's more than Japan, there's more than Western
Britain
Europe,
or
right?
France or
Britain,
Germany.
France, Germany, Italy, right? So it's great that the Polish Resident Evil community showed up, this weekend.
We show up, we
Yeah.
showed up, and we're gonna keep showing up.
I mean, it's one thing to exist, but if you don't show up, they won't know, right?
Exactly. If
So-
you don't scream, no one will hear.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much
Likewise.
for coming over
It was
here.
a pleasure to be here. Thank
And
you.
go enjoy Fantasy and Magic Con and all the Resident Evil fans.
Thank you.
Fighting the dark.